Now, brakes. We'll talk about brakes as far as the service first. Don't forget, the rear pads usually wear out first because the rears are doing braking. If it's a front-wheel drive, the front's usually what? Regen braking, okay? However, they'll wear out. In Ohio, we have a problem with the friction material falling off of what? The backing, because of rust, okay? Brake strips are out there and want to go ahead and caution you on something. How many of you guys basically do testing of brake fluid? You do testing of brake fluid because of what? Well, different things. You want to know when you should replace what? The brake fluid, right? Now, Hyundai came out with a statement, and we'll show it to you in a few. It said every 25,000 miles. The bottom line, very simply, is the only approved way to check brake fluid to see if it needs to be replaced are these copper strips. Now, why am I saying that? Well, there's something called MAP. Has anybody heard of MAP? Motorist Assurance Program? They were a nonprofit group of automotive guys that got together and they do lab tests and studies on why we should replace fluids and such. And what they're doing is protecting the industry. When you tell some customer that, hey, you should replace this fluid, what criteria did you use to sell them that service change, a fluid? How do you know on your fleet truck that you need to change the brake fluid? You guess? Or you just change it at 30,000 miles? 25,000 like Hyundai says? Or Kia? No. You test it and see if it needs to be changed. MAP has done a bunch of lab studies and they found out that the only way to accurately look at brake fluid is to use these copper test strips. They found out when the brake fluid fails, when they had it lab tested, the copper content always was high. Where's the copper come from? Interior brake parts and brake lines. Brake lines are a lot easier to what now? Bend, because they had some copper to them. A lot of the copper parts basically that are in ABS systems are there and they leach as the fluid gets old and bad. So all you have to do is basically take one of these strips, put it in the master cylinder, and you're going to look at the color. The color tells you if you need to go ahead and what? Service the brake fluid. If you got to service it, be very careful. Some companies like Ford tell you in the owner's manual DOT3 brake fluid. Ford's DOT is really DOT4 fluid. If you look at the boiling spec on it, it's not the regular DOT3. So you got to be very careful what kind of brake fluid you put in there. If it's a Ford and it tells you to use DOT3, you better not open a jug of DOT3 because that fluid isn't acceptable in a Ford. Because Ford's DOT3 is actually a different part number that's actually DOT4 in the Ford family. They call it DOT3, I don't know why, but it's DOT4 spec fluid as far as the boiling point and such. So make sure you put the right fluid in there. The strip, though, will tell you if you need to change the fluid. And if you use the strip, the MAP guidelines say that the fluid should be what? Replaced. So you're safe. Pretty simple.
How's that telling you the moisture content?
They found out that moisture content is not accurate, period, in doing lab tests. So look at this. There's your moisture content. They're saying that if you have moisture in there, it affects the copper content. Copper content is the only good indicator. They're saying moisture's not a good indicator because of the fact that the moisture's got to be where the tester is. Well, where's water versus brake fluid on the scale of specific gravity? So if you have water up here, where's it going to go? So if you're testing in the master cylinder for moisture, it's a worthless test. Now, if there's moisture in the master cylinder, yeah, you got a problem, right? But where's it going to go? Heavier than brake fluid, so it goes where? Down. That's going to rot your calipers and whatever. So that's why they're saying copper content is going to be dispersed throughout the brake fluid if there's a problem. High moisture results in high copper content. And that copper content is going to circulate through the brake fluid. You'll catch it at the master cylinder. While the moisture, you won't catch at the master cylinder. So brake bleeding, a common tech mistake could be not using the scan tool assisted bleeding. Remember, you got to open and close all those valves. If you don't open and close the valves, where's the air? Hiding right behind the valve. As soon as the ABS works that day or we turn the valve on, what happens? Now we have air, and the brake system doesn't work right. Oopsie. Don't forget, on the Chevy Volt, for instance, you got to be in service-only mode. To put the Volt in service-only mode, it's a lot easier than a Honda or a Toyota. You just don't apply the brake, press and hold the start button for 5 seconds, and it goes into service mode only, which means it uses the 12-volt battery only. It doesn't use what? High voltage. Remember, the high voltage does not power up the ABS system. It still uses what? 12 volts.
The motor needs
High amps. Yeah, it's probably got 250 amp fuses, in fact. So it needs high amps, but it's still only what? 12 volts. Right now. That could change soon. Okay. Anytime you have one of these, be careful, obviously. Ford uses them now. Everybody uses them now. So you want to keep in mind that you got to put the brakes on certain vehicles with the scan tool into service procedure. It backs off what? The caliper automatically. When you take it out of service procedure, it's most likely going to what? Adjust the caliper to where it should be. It's real embarrassing when you drive your car, you just the brakes on through the back door of the shop. Okay? Or the garage door, even worse, right? Why you drive it through? Well, you hit the brakes and the adjustment hasn't been made and the piston does what? By that time, you're at the door, just before it touches the what? Rotor. It's a rule, I think. Okay? So you got to make sure, just like in a regular car, you pump the brake a few times, bring the pistons out right, so they're right there. Otherwise, you hit the brake, man, you're pushing the caliper out, you're not doing any stopping. It's a problem, okay? So it's an issue. Now, a couple things real quickly here, and I'm not gonna go through all this. Look it up. This is the brake service mode on the 2021 Mach E, just as an example. You can do this with the scan tool. You can put the Mach E into brake maintenance mode with the scan tool. That's the quickest way to do it. If you don't have the scan tool, how are you gonna do it? Well, here it is. It deactivates the brake booster. Why? Because the brake goes through a self-test under various operational strategies. So, you can look it up here. Okay, that's the procedure. If you notice, there's a lot of pushing. Okay? Here's how you deactivate it out of service mode. This is more important. Okay? So once you're done with the brakes and you're in service mode and you safely service the brakes, if you don't know if there's a service mode or something, do yourself a favor, disconnect the fuses to the high voltage pump. If you disconnect the fuses to the high voltage pump, you may get a DTC, but you're not going to get what? A pump that opens up and turns on and applies the brakes while you're working on it. A lot safer. So if you want to get it out of brake service mode here, it's real simple. Set the ignition to on after you're done with the brakes. Press and hold the accelerator pedal. Firmly press and hold the brake pedal. And place the EBP switch in the apply upward position. The switch in the console up. Continue to hold the accelerator pedal, brake pedal, and the EBP switch. Good. Then you set the ignition to off. How do you do that holding 3 switches? Oh, 2 of them are held with your foot. Okay, I got it. Okay. So you set the ignition switch to off, then you turn the ignition on within 5 seconds. You release the accelerator pedal and the EBP switch. Once the ignition is set to on, the EBP system will fully apply and release the brakes to guarantee sufficient air gap between the brake pads and brake disc. So when you go out of service mode, it automatically what? Sets the clearance. It's cool. If you take a look at the script here, this is right from Ford. Whenever the parking brake switch is disconnected and then reconnected, a DTC is set in the ABS module and the ABS module displays the parking brake system. Disables the parking brake system. Oh gosh, so it's not going to work. Oh, better read that well. To restore braking system functionality and to clear the DTC, the park brake switch must be moved through all 3 positions twice within 5 seconds, pausing for approximately 1/2 second when the switch is in the neutral position between each apply and release. The scan tool doesn't erase it, just so you know. So you got to sit there and what?
And there's no yani like a learn function?
That is the learn function. Because when it disconnects, it has to relearn. That's why you have to do it 3 times for it to get rid of the DTCs and stuff. It's got to learn the position. You said exactly why you have to do it. So if you disconnect the switch, it learns, it misses the position, and it goes ahead and what? Can't work. It shuts itself off. Okay? Better yet, we're going to open the hood on that Lightning. You know what we're going to do to Paul? We're going to go ahead and disconnect or play with the automatic opening and closing hood. We're going to go ahead and close it a little bit, so we're going to lose the sync on the hood. So what's going to happen is when he goes to leave, he's going to try to close the hood with the button, and guess what? Not going to close. If it knows that it's lost its position, it doesn't use the automatic actuators to open and close the hood. To get it to work, what he's going to have to do is close the hood manually. Okay? It learns that position. Then he's going to go ahead and open it. It learns that position. Now it goes ahead and what? Works on its own. It's got to learn the position again. A lot of weird stuff like that on some of these cars. So you'll find out, you know, if you do something to the car and it doesn't work, do a little bit of research or call someone that's had it happen to them. Because believe me, I've screwed up so many EVs by not trying to screw them up than any of you guys in here have. You know? It's like, gee, now that doesn't work ever since you touched it. Ah, okay, likely story. But guess what? It doesn't work. What I do? Well, I learned pretty quickly all the different things I do to go ahead and screw something up. Now, next thing we want to talk about very carefully here. If you take a look at it here, here's from Ford. We're on a Ford kick, we might as well stay with Ford. See the 2 bolts in purple? What's it tell you? Trash can them, they're torque to yield. So do those brakes come with the friction material? Those bolts, I should say, for the brakes come with the friction material? No, some of them do, but on this thing it didn't. Okay.
What car is that?
Ford Mach E. Yeah, Mustang. So you better make sure you order everything you need before you what? Do the repair. There's a lot of bolts today that are being replaced. I got to give Ford credit. I've never had a problem where I couldn't get the bolts in one day. So really, ideally, you want to order them the day before you do the job, not the day of the job. Because if you do it the day of the job, you're not going to get that vehicle done that day. It won't be done until the next day. The air intake, pretty critical, right? There's some new filters they put on the air intake. What we'll usually do is turn the fan on and go ahead and put a piece of paper on that air intake. Or if you do air conditioning professionally, you've got a little meter and it spins and tells you how much airflow there is. We use those, an ammeter. Okay? So basically you could do that. Fresh air is pulled in from the rear seat in some applications. Air from basically the system exits the battery case into the trunk or outside, depending. Airflow on the Gen 2 Prius right here. You can see the intake, you can see the exhaust. Here's the flow through the battery. That's why it's so critical to make sure the fan is in good shape. Don't forget, fans look like this regularly. Okay? These fans pick up every lint and piece of dirt in that vehicle. Okay? Thank God for detailers. They don't detail the fan though. I know this for a fact. Okay? There's the Prius duct filter. Late model Toyotas added air filters basically to the duct system. You can command the battery fan on. Here you go. Fan's on, you put the piece of paper on there, what happens? Boom. Okay? We want to go basically over here real quick. And, you know, we've talked about some, but we wanted to remind you, you know, here's Kia. Okay? Published, courtesy of Kia Motors. Thank you, Kia. EVs do not require oil, which is necessary to lubricate the number of moving parts in a combustion engine. EVs are powered by electric motors, not the oil mandatory engines, which is the correct statement. But it makes it sound like what? They don't have oil.